Hi. So today we have Alessandro from Babylon Cloud. He's going to talk to us about cloud computing, keeping your stuff, keeping your information safe here in the EU and everything around that. Top of the day, Alessandro. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Hello, everybody. And thank you, Jacques, for having me in this conversation with all your audience.
Fantastic. You are very welcome. I'm so glad that you're here because there's so much being said about AI, about GDPR, about privacy. And I know you are we're going to get to that, but I know you're fanatical about privacy. So
Definitely.
I think just with Babylon Cloud, give us a 30-second origin story. Like how did this get started?
Babylon Cloud is a specialist in cloud computing and cloud storage, and it's a European company working only with European technology. We are based in Italy, but we also have offices in Ireland. We employ people from all around Europe. We started because I was thinking there was a gap in the offer and there was the opportunity to launch services with a special attention to the privacy of users, where data will be kept as close as possible to users. And we work by selling to telco operators, which resell to their customer bases. And in all cases, we install our infrastructures wherever the operator is, so as close as possible to the customer base.
That sounds very complicated. So I think what I'm going to do is let's do a lightning pitch. Let's firstly go with who's your ideal client.
So it is less complicated than it appears, at least if you are already in the business. And my usual customer is a telco operator. Meaning, I'm sorry. So we do not sell directly to our end customers. So end customers are our customers' clients. We decided to target our customer base by going through the processes of telco operators, and we sell to them so that we can leverage on the astonishing capability in selling throughout their markets, which they know better than anybody else. In every country we work, 3, maximum 4 TLC operators cover the whole customer base, and they already offer to the customers in that country every kind of services, starting from their core markets, TLC services, ranging through the all ICT services, with some differences across countries. But they are our ideal partner to target the customer bases in all the countries we get in. We work in particular in Europe and in the Mediterranean area, but we are moving through Africa and through Middle East. And our ideal end customers, so the ones we target together with the TLC operators, they are usually businesses and mostly small medium enterprises, small medium businesses. But we have offers for the large enterprises, and we are starting working with the consumer customer base. They started with Africa and the Balkans and going through.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So let's say you're talking to a small business owner that might be a good fit for you. Give me like an elevator pitch, a lightning pitch, 30 seconds. What would you tell them? Why would they need you?
Yeah. Usually the large enterprises, they know how to defend themselves from cyber attacks and how to retrieve their data in case an attack goes through. The small medium enterprise is usually less defended, if not undefended. We do what they would do if they would be larger, if they had a whole ICT group defending them.
That is all of a sudden this got very, very interesting. I love this. Okay. So that makes they're able to compete with the resources that a large scale company would have.
And I mean, this is not just an elevator pitch. It's not just a sales pitch. Some disturbs from my dog. Zucchero.
Life happened.
Stands for sugar, and he hears something. But what happens is that this is what we really want to do. I mean, we are trying to enable a whole new customer base to services that are usually much more expensive, which are to be customized on them from someone who's going to be paid for a consultancy service. By working with the telcos, we standardize services and we are able to target them to a customer base which is usually left alone with the kind of threats that usually target this customer base, this area of the market, which may remain undefended.
Okay. That's quite interesting. And I think you also have some industry knowledge that most people won't necessarily get to. So what would you say is the biggest misconception people have about the global players, the US regulations, all of that kind of stuff when it comes to European based companies?
So I don't, first of all, of course, the large operators, wherever they are, and of course, the American ones are the largest in the world and the strongest and have plenty of capabilities and the highest standards from all point of views. So not denying this at all. What I say is that there are many European players, not only us, but throughout Europe, there are a lot of players who have capabilities which are good enough to perform the task. Plus, they are closer to this market. In many cases, you will need assistance, support, and a closer player is what you actually need in this case. And finally, privacy and GDPR. So the burden of regulation is, of course, it is something with some load, something you have to deal with. It is less complex than it appears. And actually, it is in the interest of the customers to provide visibility on the certification of security and privacy, quality, respect of the rights of the users. And there's once, I mean, you have to do that if you want to serve the property, the customers on one side. And it's not impossible. It's something that can be done. What sometimes sounds ridiculous to my ear is that the large global operators, they of course claim they have full capability to support the users and to guarantee the rights to defend them, but and they have, I mean, they have income statements of tens or hundreds of $billions per year, and still they pretend that supporting regulation is too hard for them. So either the first or the second, either you can do that or you cannot. I think they can because we can. If we can, they can as well. What I think is behind this is that they probably don't really want to do that. So we live in a continent which decided to adopt a higher standard of customer defense, and this is guaranteeing a right for all the users. And me and you, Jacques, we are users on our own, and we do want our rights and the property and the respect of our data to be saved and kept. I'm worried when I listen to the request made by OpenAI, for example, to get any use of any protected data, regardless of the regulatory framework or the laws. This is worrying and this is dangerous. And even if we do not think of that, even if we think our data is so personal that cannot be in the interest of the large operator, there are cases where when we think of that, we may believe the misuse of that is definitely bad. I mean, every time we get an advertisement based on information which are very personal, and we didn't want anybody to know anything about that. So every time something like this happens, we feel offended. And I think every user has the right not to be offended in this way, and the privacy of his data to be respected as much as possible.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. When did Altman ask for all the data? Like he didn't have enough. Was it a couple of weeks ago or a couple of days ago?
It happened, it was a few days or few weeks ago, and there are, I mean, but Zuckerberg requested support from the American administration against regulation, European regulation. It was 1 month ago. So this is what is worrying to me.
That is very worrying. I know you're fanatical about GDPR, and especially because the differences. Because, like you mentioned, we live on a continent. I'm in Estonia, even though it doesn't sound like it, but we live on a continent that takes like security and privacy a lot more serious. So, can you give us an example of what the differences between the EU and the US?
Definitely. And also, I will add that so Europe adopted the GDPR regulation and they are adopting more. Nothing will be perfect. So there are things which can be fixed and there are things which probably the regulators will work on again and again. Before starting talking about the US, we work with Africa a lot and we work with the countries in Latin America. What we hear from them when we work with them is that they are afraid of Cloud Act and they wish to be protected by a GDPR framework, even if they are outside of Europe, meaning that their countries are adopting frameworks which are inspired to GDPR. And that happens in the interest of the users themselves, companies, the government themselves. What happens in the US? The key regulation on this topic in the US is the Cloud Act. Cloud Act is a law which was proposed and accepted during the first term of Donald Trump. And that's an American regulation. I do not discuss that about that. It's the law they decided to adopt for themselves, and that's okay. The problem with that is that based on that law, if any authority which can ask about that is entitled to require to any cloud operator, or actually ICT operator working in the cloud, so including a software as a service company, any data about any user they are managing, including users who are not American citizens, who do not live in the US, just for the fact that those piece of data, that data is on the platform. It is something like you are subject to the American law. Even if you live in Europe, you are not an American citizen, you're a European citizen, just for the fact that you are using that platform. And that means we are probably never safe, because what happens is that, it already happened. When we had the data gate, we found out, thanks to some people like Snowden, who revealed the information to WikiLeaks of Julian Assange, that some American companies were providing this data to the American organizations. And there were cases where there was no question of national security. It was just industrial spying. In the case where OpenAI requests a right to access any kind of data, including protected data, just for the training of AI, means that if they get any law about that, any regulation, any executive order by the president, they can do that. And any data available, they will use it just for the training of the AI. So just to create their own intellectual property. So they will take it from the right owner of that information, and it will be made as part of the AI, which will be aware of all that data. And they can find it on the internet. But since Cloud Act, which is related to the security need of the US, was used in the past outside of security needs, how can we know?
Yeah, and it also comes down to it's a balancing act which I don't think they're matching. But you kind of have to go with their law also says you're innocent until proven guilty. But you can request the data of people who haven't been found guilty of anything, but just
They could not even be suspect of anything.
jeez. No, I'm very glad we're on this side of the world, and I'm very glad you're doing what you're doing. And let's talk about that. So your competitive edge, obviously, building that kind of infrastructure inside the EU is tough and it's costly. But what makes you different from other competitors? Stuff that they can't easily match.
Well, for example, we don't keep the infrastructure in Europe alone. So we have 3 infrastructures now in Italy for Italian companies, so Italian telcos. Actually, not of Italian ownership. For example, we work with Vodafone. Vodafone Italy was recently bought by Fastweb, which is a Swiss company, a part of Swisscom Group. And we work with Windtre, which is owned by a Chinese group, Hutchison Whampoa. But we have one infrastructure in the Balkans. We have one in Ireland. We are gonna install several infrastructures in Africa, one per each operator we work with. So anytime we work with an operator, this operator has the right to request us, and we are happy to make agreements to sorry with that. So we get disturbed every time. That's the modern life, always connected.
You're an important
So
person.
we get installed. We get a new infrastructure installed for every operator, which requires that, and that means we are having several infrastructures. And each of them is supporting a specific operator, with the customer base of that operator being supported with an infrastructure in the same country. So not only respecting the GDPR framework, but also being able to support them on the side that, from the point of view that their data is not getting processed outside of their country. And since the users are connected through the telco operator we are working with, the data is never getting out of the network of that operator, which the user already trusts. And the processing we do to the data is not done accessing any single piece of data. So no files is getting out of that country, out of that infrastructure. So we manage the infrastructure alone from the system point of view, and all the processing is done automatically by the system itself, which is in the country. No administrator user, so employees of Babylon Cloud, are allowed or are able, from the system point of view, to access any single file. And this is why we call this infrastructure GDPR fanatic. All the processing is automatic and performed by the system itself, and all the single fragments of data which are managed on the server side, they were fragmented at the client level. And when they get to the server, they are not being reconstructed, recombined. Nobody could ever be able to access the original file of the user unless it is reconstructed again at the client side, when the user restores the data.
That is impressive to say the least. I'm thinking
Yeah,
that
very kind of you.
I remember you mentioned that you were bootstrapping and kind of growing slowly in the beginning. What was some of the biggest lessons that you learned?
That collecting money is a job on itself, and so it's not something that you do on a side. It's something that you do full time. This was the main problem we probably got by being born in Europe, and in one of the countries in Europe where venture capital is not best developed. So UK or Germany or even France or Spain would have been, or Switzerland would have been much better from this point of view. So Italy has not very well developed venture capital culture and environment. It was very hard to start, and we had a significant risk in the company life for the first years of our company life. Survival was the real topic every day until we finally broke even. It happened in 19. We got started in 2014, so it was 5 years, 5 very difficult years, which is a long time, and it is a longer time than a startup life in the US before they understand whether they are breaking through or not. And this is the downside of working in Europe. From that point on, we kept growing. We now grow something like 40%, plus 40% per year, which is not huge. Again, if I had to compare these to the strong growth you see in startups in America, so triple, double, it's not like this. Still, that allows us to control the equity and collect probably later by going public. and keep the growth. So the result out of this was a higher danger at the beginning, and a longer wait, so a slower growth at the beginning, and that's it.
It sounds like your advice, the lessons that you learned was start a business in the US or in the Baltics where we have this startup culture and VCs.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the Baltics, they're a good school in Europe. Compared to the size of the countries, they have a wonderful business environment and VC.
Awesome. So what advice would you give founders except now for go to the Baltics or the US?
I'm not good at giving advices. I can just share my experience. This is not over. So I believe every but I happen to work in different environments. We have customers throughout the world, and we have partnership throughout the world, in Latam, in Europe, Middle East, in Africa. I Everywhere I go, I see different environments. Everyone has its own peculiarities, its pros, its cons. Definitely, there are areas where things are easier, but my take on starting a startup in Italy, which is not a thing I would advise. Usually you get to Italy to get a nice holiday and to drink and have food and tourism. So you don't
Meet
do that. You,
wonderful
you
people.
don't start the ICT company in Italy. I know it sounds strange. It worked fine for us because we have good universities with plenty of talents, and the cost of life is lower and salaries are lower. So although we try to keep quite a growth for all our people, we have two performance reviews per year, and we discuss salary increase twice per year, and we aim at having an increasing average salary for every people and something higher than the standard in the country. Still, this worked fine for us. And although it may seem incredible, we found support from the state, and our tax percentage is lower than the rest of the country because of what we do. And it works. I think that there will be a chance, and there are capabilities and special pros in every place. You have to be very aware of what you have and leverage on all the strengths you can find, and find your path wherever you are. And I don't know whether this is a good advice, but we were able to do that. And if we did that, everybody can. And that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I was thinking, I know we spoke a little bit about AI, and obviously that's the biggest thing that everyone keeps talking about. I know that you mentioned that Babylon is also looking into machine learning and AI. How does the future look like, especially with like data sovereignty being in the spotlight?
Yeah. So we are launching with one of the telcos we work on an AI product. We work with several different LLMs. Of course, we run them on our servers first, and second, what we started creating was a private AI, segregating the data so that the AI, which is answering to the queries of Jacques, is aware of the files of Jacques, and the AI answering to the questions of Alessandro is only aware of the files of Alessandro, apart from the general training which is performed on a legitimate database. Of course, we prefer working with European LLMs, and we are starting a partnership with an Italian company which work on an LLMs. We have 3 in Italy that I'm aware of. There could be more, that including some that I'm not aware of. But I see there's a lot of things going on in Europe. Of course, the largest investments, they were in the US. And of course, the pioneering investments were in the US. But you don't need to be the first every time. You can do a pretty good job by being the second one and by guaranteeing what the first one is missing. So, for example, you could recall that when OpenAI started with the first chat GPT, which was working pretty well, they were stopped in Italy first, and then in Germany and Ireland, UK, don't remember which other countries, starting in Italy because they were not complying with some requirements which were extremely easy, so that most of the ICT companies in Italy were complying. And it was something to me incredible that a company with the funding, which at that time was speaking something like $70 billion, had problems in complying to that. Apart from the pretended difficulty in complying to that, once they had their talk with the regulator, in a couple of days they were up and running again with all the needs complying, and they were working exactly the same as they were working the day before. Of course, there's a trying on this to get the most power as possible from the data. Data is the wealth of the future. It's the density of value of the data, even if you which are intangible, you don't touch them, you store them in disk or other supports, but they are not physical, and there's an amount of value which is unbelievable if you think that you need managing data in order to provide any different kind of service now. And you see this when you look at the NIS2 regulation, the number of companies where the correct maintenance of data is critical to the business and to the survival of the country. Every country in Europe is huge. So from NIS 1 to NIS 2 in every country. In Italy, they moved from something like 60 company to 30,000, which are critical in maintaining and defending their data. And you think just the whole supply chain in managing aqueducts, or the supply of the large distribution, or power systems, whatever you need, and whatever a country need to work properly. It's getting more and more critical. We have to maintain. Every user has the right to keep personal the data, which are personal. Every company and every country has the right to maintain the sovereignty on this data. And that also implies the rights to access the data from the AIs and from the companies which develop and maintain the AIs.
Jeez, that sounds like a whole lot to unpack. I think we can have 15 different episodes just on all the information that you know and how all of that ties together and how it forms a part of what we need to go forward. But I think let's do this. What type of businesses are you looking to connect with in the next 3 months? Is it just telcos from different?
We usually work with telcos, but that's because in every country they are the best channel ever, and we are very well connected to their needs. We are very well connected to their processes, and we are very well integrated usually with the telcos. But we actually work with any large channel. We usually automatize a lot, and every channel which allows high automation to reach a large customer base is what we love.
Beautiful. So if someone like that is watching this and thinking, yeah, they need more information about this, how can they get in contact with you?
It's our website, info at babyloncloud.com, or on the LinkedIn where my profile is open to.
Fantastic. And on LinkedIn, will they also be able to follow your journey as you break new boundaries with GDPR fanatics?
I hope it is interesting enough, but yeah, I mean, it's we are discussing together with this small network of people I talk with about. Usually, we talk a lot about GDPR, about the right of users to maintain the control over their data, and in the last 2 months, we are talking a lot about tariffs from the US to the European Union.
That sounds like an amazing conversation to be a part of.
Yes, sometimes it's there's some discussion. It makes sense. It makes sense to have dialectics and to to discuss with people who have different perspectives. Of course, our friends in America, they can see that in a different way. And it's through discussion and confrontation, I mean, to peaceful and respectful confrontation, that we will go through that and we'll find new solutions which fit both.
Fantastic. Alessandro, it was so nice to have you today. Thank you for all the
My
information.
pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me to this, and thank you for anybody who listened to us, even if we were interrupted by my small dog and by the colds.
And some internet stuff. Yes, yes. Modern life. Thank you so much, sir. Hope you have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.